Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Bob's Woodshop. On today's episode, we are going to be turning a once-turned bowl, and I'm going at it with my Ego chainsaw. And the reason I bought this chainsaw is to use it in my garage like this. And this is a 21-inch piece of box elder, and I want to see how that works on here. And as a matter of fact, it worked great. Okay, so for today's project, we're going to cut up this piece of box elder. And this is a great piece. It's going to make a couple nice bowls. This thing is 21 inches in diameter. And one thing you don't want, the main thing you don't want when you're cutting up a log like this, is you don't want the pith. This is going to dry and crack at a much faster rate than all the rest of the wood. So in order to get a bowl blank, we want to cut and not have the pith in there. So I'm going to cut a line like this. This is wet. This is really wet. This was just cut about 5 days ago. And my buddy Gil gave this to me. So we're going to get the Ego chainsaw, which is why I bought it, to cut like inside the shop. But it is a nice day here in late December of 2021. And so I want one bowl blank here, another bowl blank here. I want to get rid of all this, and then we'll have this piece here, or this and this piece here for another project. So let me get the chainsaw fired up and we'll start. Okay, this is why wood turners love box elder. You got this beautiful flame colors already built into the wood. The embellishment is already in there. And let's see this piece over here. So one thing about box elder, it's got this really horrendous smell. It smells like a nasty, musty smell. But this will be a nice, a very nice bowl blank, and we're gonna get that started here in a second. Cut. Okay, so the smaller piece, this is about 11 or 12 inches in diameter, and this is coming out really nice. And next thing to do is put it on the bandsaw and cut a circle. Cut. Okay, the next step of the process is we're going to have to get this into a bowl blank orientation now. And I like using these discs I've got a whole bunch of them depending on the size of the bowl that I've got. And we're going to start with this little one first. And usually what I'll do, I'll just screw this on temporarily like this. And I'm just going to follow the blade around there. That is a lot easier than trying to put a compass on here and drawing lines on that bark. So we've got the saw set up. Come on over. And we're going to lower the bearing assembly, and we're just going to cut around this. And now we got a nice little bowl blank. Okay, here's the pith, and I'm going to have to turn this down so that pith is out of there, because you always want to take the pith out of it. And I got some splitting in here also, so this is going to end up being a shallow bowl. Okay, so cut. Okay, let's take this off. I'm at the limits of the saw. Yeah, ideally this should be perfectly round, but this is a pretty big piece of wood, probably weighs about 50 pounds. And ideally you wouldn't want any of these sharp edges right here, because it's going to make a ka-thunk ka-thunk sound when I put it on the lathe, but that'll quickly turn off. Let's take a look at the piece of wood itself now. And yeah, this is going to be a spectacular bowl. So this is going to be the bottom. Actually, I could probably get two bowls out of that. I got a knot right here. I'm going to have to turn a lot of this away. But yeah, cool grain structure. And come around here. See, these points are going to make ka-thunk ka-thunk sounds, but we can overcome that on the lathe. I'm going to do this with a faceplate. You know, I really don't like using worm screws for these applications, so I'm just going to screw in a bunch of Kreg screws. I like using Kreg screws. You can use wood screws, you can use panhead screws, but don't use drywall screws, because drywall screws are brittle and have a tendency to break. I'm just kind of eyeballing this on here. Any inconsistency, if it's not quite in the center, we'll turn that out on the lathe. A little bit. Okay, so if you got a big unbalanced piece of wood like this, you want to start real slow. I actually just started this up at 500 and it was shaking the lathe, so I stopped it. Now it's running at 100, and I want to just crank this up, and I can do that real easily with this lathe. So that's at 190. And what you want to do is go as fast as you can without this lathe shaking a whole lot. Okay, so now with the 310. Okay, so we're just starting to shake, so I'm going to back it down to 325. All right, and I'm going to start. I've got the tool rest where I want it, and I'm going to start the good old ka-chunk, ka-chunk, ka-chunk process. Now again, because this is uneven and unbalanced, and I just sharpened up the, this is my favorite tool, the Ellsworth bowl gouge. And I'm going to start attacking it now. You go into this real slow. You're not trying to, certainly not trying to take any big cuts on this thing. And always have tailstock. If you can get the tailstock on there, make sure you do. You wouldn't want this just hanging out there without tailstock support. So let's start here. Okay, so I've got this big old chuck from Hurricane Tools, and this has a 6-inch diameter. This is such a big bowl. I want to make a really big spigot. So right now I'm at about 6 3/8. And when you're doing a spigot, there's actually a couple things you really want to do. You got to make sure that this surface, can you see down here? This surface here has to sit flat on here. So that's one critical step. And then the bottom of the spigot cannot touch this surface. And one other thing is this chuck has like a dovetail type pattern in there. So I'm going to make this a little bit narrower. I'm going to put a little bit of a dovetail on it. And then I got to make sure that the length of this spigot, which right now is at 5/8, does not bottom out here. If this part hits this part, it's going to fly off the lathe. And then, like I said, this thing's probably down to about 30 pounds right now, and I'd really rather not that be flying up in my face. So 3 critical things: make sure this surface is flat to here, and a little bit of a dovetail here, and this cannot be too deep. If it's too deep, you're going to have a big accident later on and shortly. So I'm going to have to clean up the spigot a little bit. This is on regular speed, eh?
Yes.
Okay, make it a little bit smaller. Ready? Go. I'm using a Bedan in order to get some flat cuts here. Still got a little ka-chunk out here. I'm feeling a little ka-chunk. It's this little piece. That's right there. It is round now. Got a little more off of this. Okay, so this is now 6-inch diameter, and I just want to clean up the surface right here in order to make sure that this is flat against the face of the jaws. This is probably the most critical part of turning a bowl, is making sure this spigot fits correctly into the chuck. Okay, so it took me a couple minutes to just make this the way I want it. But again, this is probably the most critical part of turning a lathe. You want to make sure that this surface is flat against the bowl and this surface is not bottoming out on the chuck jaws. If that's not the case, then this is most likely almost guaranteed that this is going to fly off the lathe. And I always like doing this prior to taking the faceplate off. I want to make sure that this fits correctly, because I don't want to guess that and then find out that I made a mistake and have to put the faceplate back on. So now at this point I can turn it around. Oops. And get this locked in. All right, cut.
Okay, done.
Okay, so the chuck fits on here really nice. This is looking good. I'm wondering what this wants to be right now. It's looking like a big flower pot. All this red. Over time, it's a shame because this red over time, once light hits it, it's actually going to turn brown. But in the meantime, for the next few years, it's going to be this spectacular color. You're better off with a box elder bowl not to leave it in the sunlight. So I've got the headstock locked, and I'm just going to take this off, and then I'm going to take the faceplate off and turn it around. Cut. Okay, so right now I'm thinking, oh, what does this want to be? I've got a little bark inclusion here, and if I just turn it like this looks like it's a planter, and I really don't need a planter. And I got a little bit of the pith left up in here. So what I want to do, I want to really turn off about 3 inches off of this. So this is going to take a while. This is what I was worried about. That pith right there. I'm trying to get past this this portion, and right here we got a big crack, and that would really mess up the bowl. So I'm going to really take another, almost like 1 3/4 out of this. And even so, I'm still going to have about 4.5, 5 inches in depth, which will make a very nice bowl. So I'm just going to keep going at this. So we took about 3-4 inches off the top of this, and now this is more of a traditional bowl look versus a planter. I still got some bark over here, so I put my curved tool rest on here, and this is the spigot, and I've got to make a spot for the foot, right? So I'm going to knock off this corner here. Okay. One of the things I want to do is I want to try to keep this as big as possible. So I want to make a foot, and I really don't want to mess a whole lot with this outside edge. I'm getting you wet, Henry? Getting wet?
Not much.
So what I'm doing now is trying to come up with the final, or close to the final shape. And one of the things I'm doing, I'm trying to get a nice pleasing curved profile over here. And I'm really not worried about cut quality at this point in time, because if we still have to hollow this and bag it for a year, because like I said, this is only 5 days old. So I'm just trying to get one shape, and over that time frame of a year, it's going to lose a lot of moisture. It's going to go oval, and so I'm really not worried about cut quality at this point in time. That'll come later when I'm doing the second turning. Okay. So that's good for now. Oh, I actually still have a flat spot right here, so I'm gonna have to turn this a little bit more and get that flat off of here. I didn't notice that before. Okay, so next part of the process is we're going to have to hollow out the center, and then we'll be done with it for a year. So I'm going to go ahead and chuck up a Forstner bit to knock out the center of this. I'll be back with you in a minute. All right, so when I'm turning a ball, I like to start with a Forstner bit for a couple different reasons. So I'm not fighting this nubbin all the way down, and also to find the depth of the ball. So I want to go down roughly 4 inches, and 4 inches on here is about halfway through this knurl. So I'm going to use the lathe as a horizontal drill press, and I'm going to go slow and drill a hole to right about there. Oops. Stop it.
So someone else doesn't make that mistake.
Yeah, I will. Okay, I went ahead and swapped out this bit. I made a bigger bit, so this bit is actually fatter or wider than this. And that's slipping a little bit, so let's try this again. Got to clear this out pretty frequently so the bit doesn't get jammed up in there. Okay, so we have to determine the wall thickness that we want to make the bowl. And the bowl right now is a little bit more than 12 inches. So we're going to make the wall thickness to account for shrinkage at about 1 1/4, 1.5 inches. And then after a year, when this goes oval, that'll give us enough room in order to turn a perfectly round bowl. So I'm going to turn this, put this right here, a little bit below center, and we're going to start again. Now it's pretty round, right? Well, it is round at this point in time, so we should be able to turn it up a little faster. Oops.
Not that fast.
Okay. So you turn as fast as you can before the lathe starts shaking, and we're at about 500 RPM.
I'm gonna go time lapse now.
Yeah.
it too high there, wasn't it?
Yep. So, all right, so we got this at about 1.125 inches, maybe a little bit more, and we have a consistent wall thickness all the way up here. So now it's time to take it off the lathe. And again, this is called the first turning or the once turned bowl. And the object now will be to coat this with anchor seal, which we're going to do now. Okay, so the final part of the process today is to coat this thing in anchor seal. And what anchor seal does is coat this and allows the drying process to be more stable and more slow. If I just put this on a shelf, there's a pretty good chance it's going to crack somewhere. If I put some anchor seal on it and wait about a year, there's a much better chance that it's not going to crack. Okay, so this is some type of emulsion product. I'm just going to stir it up a little bit. It looks like it actually doesn't even need to be stirred. It looks pretty homogeneous. So I blew this off with compressed air. And I've seen this done in a couple different ways where guys will just do the end grain, right? Because the end grain dries faster than the side grain, right? But what I typically do, I'll coat the whole thing.
Come around on this side so you can see what you're doing.
Oh, I feel like you got a lot done today. Okay. So I'm gonna let that dry. Just put it on normal speed.
We're on normal speed.
Yeah, we are? Okay. All right, so from here, I'm gonna let that dry for a couple hours, and I'm gonna get a bunch of the shavings. Look over here. I'm gonna get a bunch of these shavings. Once that's dry, grab a bunch of these wet shavings, put the shavings and the bowl in a bag. I'm gonna mark the date of the bag. Today's the 29th of December, so I'll know around Christmas time next year, I'll be able to turn this with the final turning and get a nice, beautiful flame box elder bowl. So that pretty much wraps it up for this episode. And hey, I'll see you on the next time. Well, that was a lot of fun. I hope you learned something today. That's how you turn a once-turned bowl. And until next time, I'll see you on another episode of Bob's Woodshop. Thanks for tuning in today.